All right, I have 12 o'clock on the dot, so we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to our Wednesday webinar. This is the fifth one of these that we've done, so we're so excited that you're here. My name is Allison McWilliams. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Mentoring and Alumni Personal and Career Development here at Wake Forest. And along with my colleagues, Lauren Beam and Megan Hoyt, I'm so thrilled that you all are here with us today. In our roles, we support students, faculty and staff, and alumni as they build community, grow their networks, and develop their careers. And this webinar series is just one of the resources that we are providing to do that work. So you see on the screen here where you can find all of these resources on our websites and on social, and we definitely invite you to connect with us there. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Tiffany Waddell Tate, a Wake Forest alumna and the Associate Director of National Engagement in our Office of Alumni Engagement here at Wake. Additionally, Tiffany runs her own career and style coaching business, and she is passionate about helping others develop themselves professionally and helping them to add value to their professional relationships and organizations. So today, she's going to share with us some of her favorite remote work hacks, which I think we can all agree is a topic of high interest and high need right now. So a few things before I hand it over to Tiffany. We are recording this webinar and we will post it on our new Learn with Life After Wake platform, which you can find at our alumni website. And all of you who are on this call will also get a personal email with a recording link as well, plus some bonus resources perhaps. You all are muted and your videos are turned off, but I will be monitoring the chat box. So if you have any issues or you want to put any questions, just put it over there. And I will try to help with issues, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for Tiffany to answer some questions. So with that, Tiffany, I am going to hand it over to you and we will get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. As Allison mentioned, I do work on campus in University Advancement on our alumni team. So some of you dialing in today might know me by way of email, or maybe I've met you in person during my travels over the past couple of years. But I'm excited to talk about things that are working for me right now in terms of managing a remote work lifestyle. I know some folks on the call, I was scanning the chat, have worked remotely prior to navigating COVID-19. And we know that this is a very different time than we're used to, even if remote work is something that's familiar to you. So hopefully this will be useful and you'll walk away with some gems that you can apply in the days and weeks ahead. So first, before we jump in, I just want to highlight that we're not just working from home right now. We are at our homes, hopefully, and trying to work during a crisis. So it's really important to give yourself grace and be kind to yourself. And this is something I try to reflect on daily because I have a penchant for getting really all into my work. And if you're on this call, you probably are like that as well. But I'm also navigating a partner here at home with me who is working full-time remotely, and we have a 4-year-old daughter. So this is not a typical work from home situation. So I like to start this conversation just highlighting that, acknowledging it, and affirming that we are all trying to do the best that we can. Hence why we wanted to have this conversation today. So think about it. If you are new to facilitating a work from home setup, it might feel kind of overwhelming to you to imagine how to create systems for your work when you're also managing your life. You might be managing caregiving or parenting at home. You might live alone and be worried about family who is far away from you. You might be negotiating project time and call time with a partner or other people in your household. And you might be really used to having face-to-face time with a community in a traditional work setting or traveling. If you've operated in a flexible work environment before, you might be used to the remote part of what we're dealing with, whether that's in your home or what they say on social media, working from anywhere. You might be used to creating focus zones for yourself, which we'll talk about in a bit, but your teammates, housemates, clients, and community members might not be used to that. So how you navigate working remotely right now will still look a little different than what you might be used to. So first thing to consider when you are trying to create more of a work from home structure and flow that feels good for you is to think about your space and how you're using the space that you're in. I like to think of this as creating focus zones. So the first layer of this, of course, is the physical space that you're working in. So I know some people have the luxury of having a separate room that they have dedicated just to work from home. Some of you might be working in a particular corner in your house or at your dining room table or maybe one half of your couch. There is no magical sort of framework or prescription for what that physical space should look like. But the idea is to be really intentional about curating where and when you work so that your workstation, so to speak, is where your most important work gets done every day. My recommendation would be to identify a place or two in your home that is for work. And that's where you go to hop on your computer or take calls most of the time. It doesn't mean you don't step away from that space. I know I have colleagues who do walking meetings, and that's their way to get exercise in and get some fresh air throughout the day. But making sure you have a physical space that is your anchor for working is really important for creating boundaries between work and personal time. The second layer of this is sort of physical, but it's important to find the light. So our colleague Megan Hoy always talks about finding the light when she's making social media videos, and that has stuck with me because when you're on all of the Zoom, Google Hangout, and other video conference tools, it's really important to have light in front of or beside you. So if there's a window in the place where you are finding yourself working, make sure that it's not behind you because it will create a really bad image on the video, a halo around your head, and it won't translate very well on video. If you don't have a window nearby, consider moving a lamp or two around in the space so that the light source is directly in front of you and behind the camera. That just elevates what you look like on the camera and makes meeting time a little bit more user-friendly. And then finally, boundaries. I've kind of spoken to this already, but boundaries are more important now than they ever have been because working from home means that you need to create focus zones that are critical to honoring personal time and work time. I think it's really easy, no matter what industry or profession you're in, to start your work day at a particular time. Maybe you're an early bird like me and you wake up at 7, to not turn it off at the same time that you normally would because you had a commute or childcare pickup or other things that have built-in barriers to your day. So creating boundaries and a fixed schedule that you try to adhere to every day is really important for helping create these focus zones. So back to space. On your screen, you'll see a little snapshot of my somewhat messy office, but for me, I had already created a work from home sort of work office because I do also run a business outside of my full-time role. And so I needed a physical space to record videos and take client calls on the weekends. But when we went into shelter in place, I guess 6 weeks ago now, I had to change a few things about my work from home room because I was doing other things in this room that I wasn't really doing most of the time before, and navigating having a small child running around at home while I was working. So making sure that your background is staged kind of nicely, and caveat to everything I'm saying, I don't think you should spend a lot of money on creating your work from home space, but you can be really intentional about how and where you use objects that are already in your home. So if you have art in another room, you can pop a piece of art behind you on the wall. It makes sort of a nice little vignette when you're on video conference calls so that you don't sort of have a blank wall or dark space behind you. Again, that lighting in front of you when you're on video is really important. Being thoughtful about ergonomics, so how your physical being is throughout the day. Are you sitting in a chair that's comfortable? Are you sitting all the way back on your seat? And are you sitting up straight? And is your laptop or monitor at a level that you're not craning your neck? So if you are working on a laptop and don't have a second screen, think about putting your laptop up on a riser. You can use a box. I'm literally using a box right now to hold my laptop up so that I'm not leaning over and hurting my neck for 6 to 8 hours a day. Little changes like that can really influence both your physical person and the way that you show up on conference videos. If you are working in a space that is shared with other people, whether they are adults or children or both, coming up with a signal or sign so that everyone knows, hey, I'm available, or hey, I'm not. is something that I identified pretty early. So I worked it out with my partner and our daughter that if my door is closed, I'm not available. And if it's open, even though I'm working, you're more than welcome to come in and chat with me or have an extra hug. Because I don't want to be in my office all day with no human contact. So creating some type of signal, whether that's a little sign, something hanging on the doorknob, or an actual closed or open door is really great. And then think about the lean necessities that you might need to do good work. So when you're in an office environment or you're on the go, you might be used to having a notepad next to you or leveraging headphones. In this time of working from home, it's really important to take stock of the things that you actually need. So while you don't necessarily need to have a lot of clutter or extra office supplies or anything like that, having a place where you can jot down quick notes and having a solid pair of headphones is a really good idea because it helps with sound when you're working on the computer or taking a lot of phone calls and you don't want to hold the device right up next to your face. I have a mini dry erase board on my desktop that allows me to take quick notes and then I can erase it. So I'm saving the environment a bit and not using pages and pages in a notebook, which I might normally do. And then staying hydrated. This isn't really a space footnote, but keeping a bottle of water or a cup of water next to you so that you don't forget to drink water throughout the day, because working from home means that if you're like me, you might not have those natural organic breaks in the day where every hour or so, when I was in the office before, I would get up, take a lap, say hi to some colleagues on campus and fill up my water bottle. I don't have that option now. And so it's really important that I start my day with a large cup of water to ensure that I'm getting my full hydration in. Other things to consider, tools. So right now, you're probably feeling technology overload, even if you were using technology prior to being sheltered in place. Getting familiar with technology that's relevant to your work is really important because there are so many tools out there. Your company or organization likely already has some tools built into their landscape. So see what's already available to you. So working at Wake, we have several video conferencing tools, for example, that we can use to host meetings, but figuring out what's available and what works best for your needs is really critical, because I think sometimes we can be tempted to onboard every tool imaginable, but think about your workflow, think about the types of conversations you need to have. Are the folks that you're connecting with internal to your organization, external to your organization? What will be the easiest to use for your respective meeting or work needs, right? So Zoom, Google Hangouts, WebEx, GoToMeeting, BlueJeans. There are so many video conferencing tools specifically that it can be a little overwhelming. And so I highly recommend, if you have the time and haven't done it already, to check out the training videos that are available for each tool that's at your disposal. It's worth the extra 10 minutes to watch and test out everything so you get comfortable working in that online environment. Some of the other icons on the screen that you'll see are tools that some of us use in our work. So Slack might be one that you're familiar with. It's a way to create micro channels of conversation, and they're really great for quick, digestible bites. They're not great for things that should be an email. And so it's really important to think about what are the channels of communication that we have available to us, what are they best used for, and then acting accordingly and communicating with everyone. Hey, here's when we use email, here's when we might use Slack or not, and here's when it's time to jump on a video meeting. Being really thoughtful about what's best practice, whether it's at your organization or more globally, is really critical to leveraging technology tools for success. Other things to consider: time. So we talk about SMART goals all the time, largely in the performance management arena. We talk about creating SMART goals that are measurable, specific, things you can achieve, and that are relevant to your work and have time attached to them. Now is a great time to think about, what are your SMART goals? What are some of the goals you set in Q1 that you are still working towards now in Q2? And what are some things that you set, but you have to pivot or let go of, either because of resources, time, or your ability to actually drive that goal home? And maybe it's not a great time to finish that goal. Sitting down and combing through what are some of the things that you need to accomplish in your role or on your team, and making sure that there aren't goals that you should take off of your plate and replace with new ones, and communicating out what that looks like for everyone. Once you've identified what those critical sort of action steps or larger project goals are, prioritizing your work is deeply important. So this isn't new because we're in a remote environment. Hopefully you were doing these things already, but deadlines might change, and your deadlines will definitely change based on how they impact your immediate work outcomes, but also how they impact other people, right? And another thing to think about that you might not have thought about as much when you were in a traditional work environment, or you might not have thought about if you've been working remotely and it's been your only environment, is how you manage your personal energy and obligation. So once you figure out what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve this week or in the next 2 weeks or in the next month or so, for example, figuring out how you can organize those tasks based on A, the deadline for those deliverables, and then B, your energy, right? So when I was in a traditional office environment, I might start my day with a particular task because it was quiet in my office. Now, the things that I would normally have done at the top of the day, I might move to another part of my day, literally because I have a little bit more energy at that time now that I'm home and I'm waking up a lot earlier than I was before. Or I might move what was quiet time from, let's say, 9 to 10:30 to 1 to 2:30 if I can, because that's literally nap time. And so your personal obligations or your energy levels might inform how you prioritize some of your work, and that's okay. So I think getting really clear on what those goals are, when you want to achieve them, who they impact, and then how you can do your best work, what does that ebb and flow looks like is really important. And I think a lot of times we forget that our energy is just as important as the other deadlines that we've set. So that you can really be clear-headed and focused on the things that you need to do. And some of you might know me on the call, you may not, but it was a challenge for me. I'll be honest. It was a challenge when we first started this full-time remote work, because I am great working remotely when I'm by myself because there are no other interruptions. I can manage my time. I know my energy flow. I'm really clear on who and how to reach out to certain folks across our organization. But it kind of threw me for a loop getting used to working and negotiating time and when I could do calls and meetings with other people around that have very real needs and I love very much. And so figuring out how to reprioritize and calibrate your orientation to time and task is deeply important during this season. Another thing to think about in terms of time, again, is how you set and communicate your schedule. So starting your day with a ritual like a fresh cup of coffee or tea, listening to your favorite podcast, or doing a yoga sequence. I have started doing a lot more yoga these days, is a great way to set a fixed structure of something that you can not only look forward to, but ease into your day so that you're not just jumping out of bed and jumping right on your computer. Making sure that there's some other things that you're doing for yourself and your whole person before you jump on to technology tools, for me, has been really important during this time. And then reviewing that to-do list. Again, prioritizing key tasks and people that you need to reach out to that day or that week, and making sure that they get done, and that you're able to check in with key players on your team to make sure there isn't something that might have come up that, while you might have found out about it because you overheard it at the water cooler in our earlier environment, now that you're working remotely, it's really important to make sure that we're reaching out and communicating and checking in to make sure that there isn't new information you might need that might change the workflow that you're working on. And then, of course, mitigate all chaos. That is my kind of go-to during this time. Setting a schedule, communicating it with your team or your family or both, so that no one is left guessing how to best get in touch with you and when to get in touch with you. I think that's really important. So if you worked in a remote environment prior to this, you probably had this on your, top 3 things I do every week. But if this is new to you and new to the folks that you're working with, remember that the way that you work and the way that you operate might be really different from everyone else. And we don't have the luxury of being seen because we're in our homes or, other places. And so making sure that you're communicating, hey, I'm not going to be online from this time to the folks that need to know, so that they're not trying to find you or sending you frantic texts. Making sure that you are just communicating and using even an out of office away message when necessary. Learning to say no to people and projects that do not align with your goals is also really important in this time, because while we have the same amount of time on our work week, or in our work week rather, we kind of don't, because we have so many competing priorities personally and professionally. And sometimes it's great to raise your hand and say, I would really love to jump in and be on that project or be on that team or participate in that. And that's a great sort of professional strategy to both upskill in areas that are new to you and advance your professional journey, right? But right now, it's okay to say no to things that don't align with your goals. It's really important to remember that you're not a superhero. It's not possible to get everything done in the same amount of time. And if you've been on the internet like me lately, there's a lot of conversation on social media about productivity and how we measure productivity and how we measure success and all of that. And so I'm not saying, and I hope no one will walk away from this webinar today hearing, don't be productive. Definitely be productive. We still have an obligation to ourselves and to our work and to our teams to get things done if you have the luxury of having a job right now, right? But that doesn't mean you have to get everything done and that every new idea needs to happen right now. And so learning to say no to people and projects that just don't align or just aren't a good fit right now is a really important professional skill to get comfortable with. And now is a great time to do it. Also with time, starting your meetings on time is very important. So consider the amount of time that you might need to buffer between meetings when you're scheduling. I have felt the burn of this for the last 6 weeks because it is so tempting to schedule things back to back with no break. Try not to make this a habit, because what you won't realize until you're feeling the burn of burnout is that before we walked to meetings, or we might have driven to meetings, or we might have had a little bit more break in our workday just because there were things like transition that had to be built in. But now, you schedule a Zoom meeting, and if there's no buffer on your calendar, then you could literally jump out of one meeting and go into the next and not have any time to process, take a break, take a bio break, get some water. And so making sure that you are making or creating a little bit of buffer time between your meetings and scheduling meetings for the length of time they actually need to be. So does your organization default to an hour for all of your meetings? Think about if the agenda or the content of that meeting really needs to be an hour, or if defaulting to 25 or 30 minutes is more ideal, and you can extend it if you need more time. So thinking about how you leverage time is deeply important, not just for your own individual contributions, but also for the way that you work with others. Making sure that you're crafting agendas based on key questions that the group needs to consider, and ending every meeting with really clear next actionable steps. Be thoughtful about how much time you're taking, and be thoughtful about whether or not something requires a meeting or an email. This might sound kind of trite to say, but does everything require a camera? Does it require a quick phone call? Is it something that you need to work on individually, or do you need to be collaborative? So asking those questions every time you step into a new project, and remember to keep it simple, is really important during the season. And then if you're running late or having technical difficulties, I've had a lot of technical difficulties this week, let people know ahead of time if you can. So similarly to in real life, or face-to-face, I should say, online engagement has courtesies built in, and there are business agreements that are embedded into our work cultures. Let's not forget those just because we're in our homes, right? Like, we are still ambassadors for our organizations and our work. And so it's really important to be thoughtful and just communicate and say, hey, I'm having trouble with my mic right now. I'll be right back, so that no one is left guessing, knowing what's going on with you. Being really engaged with the task in front of you is important. A couple quick things that I do. I like to use the Pomodoro method for email management. So I'll set a timer for 25 minutes. And that is the only thing I will work on during that time. And then once the timer is up, I move on to something else. Because if you don't time tasks like email or other administrative tasks that are similar in scope, you could get sucked in and do it for hours. And so I like to do short chunks of time and then get up, get some water, and do something else. And that keeps me sort of fresh and moving through something and not kind of lollygagging. Organizing focus time on your calendar a few times a week. This, of course, will vary based on what you do and the nature of your work and the nature of how you work with other people and that type of. But if you can, organizing some time on your calendar a couple times a week where there's no room for meetings during that time. It's time for you to actually work on projects and tasks, because if you don't, it'll be really hard to create boundaries between personal and work time. Sometimes I play music for background noise if I want a little bit of white noise that I might have had while working in a coffee shop or something like that. And sometimes, like right now on this call, I invited my family to go outside and play and literally fly a kite so that I can have a little bit of silence to have this conversation with all of you. And making sure to step away and take a little brain break so that you can rest your eyes is important as well. Other things to consider, communication. So again, I've kind of touched on this, but communication matters right now more than ever. So using video meetings and turning your video meeting on, or turning your video on so that people can see each other, is fantastic if it's time to have a video meeting. Honoring people if they can't turn their video on or don't want to, and making that okay, sort of in your meeting agreements or in the opening of meetings. Emailing and following up on progress and sharing updates is key. And then just being really clear, right? Like it's easy to say be really clear, but try to be really clear in your communication so that folks don't walk confused. Ask questions if you're confused, because there's nothing worse than sort of sitting in this gray area and not knowing whether or not something is actionable, a brainstorm, or priority. And so getting really clear on those things are now so important while we're in this environment. Finally, things to consider: embracing flexibility. If nothing else, I hope to leave you with something that I personally struggle with, but I find it deeply valuable. Don't sweat the small stuff. There's no way for all of us to get this right. Like I said at the top of the call, we are working from home, yes, but we're also working during a crisis, and we're navigating multiple schedules, conflicting priorities, a workforce that has a considerable amount of people who are learning how to work in an online environment and didn't really have a lot of prep time, right? And so each day or each week, you might find new strategies or rhythms that work for your work-life integration. So take stock of what works for you, take stock of what doesn't work for you, and what surprises you. All of this information is data, and it can serve you as you create a now normal for your work. So again, don't sweat the small stuff, because productivity is never an accident. It's always the result of a commitment to excellence, intelligent planning, and focused effort. So while you are much more than your productivity, I want to leave you with one takeaway: that you can still be really intentional during this time with how you manage your space, your time, and your energy, and how you focus on communication and leveraging technology. So productivity is never an accident. So I implore you all to just be really intentional after this. I hope that this session has been helpful to you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiffany. Just so many good things in there. I've been watching the chat and I didn't see any questions pop up, but certainly after the fact, if you have any you want to send us, don't hesitate to do so. I think one of the things that really stuck with me, there are these things that are kind of so obvious and simple, but you don't think about them, is this idea of not scheduling meetings back to back just because we can now, and giving yourself those breaks. I do want to make a quick plug to stay connected with us. So Beyond the Forest is our e-newsletter, and that's how you get like the first look at events like these. And then next week, our weekly webinar is by another awesome Wake Forest alumna, Emily Goodson, and she's going to be talking about supporting employees and building culture in the midst of crisis. So another on-point topic, I would say. So that's next Wednesday at noon, and hopefully look forward to seeing you all there. And for that, I will say thank you to all of you for taking the time, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks so much.